What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Disc Golf Nerd Plastic Podcast. So, a bunch of things have happened since we last spoke. Paul's leaving. It's a done deal. He's leaving Innova. And then today, news dropped that Ricky Wysocki is moving on from Latitude 64. Both of these moves are extremely surprising to the hardcore fans. And it's been a wild offseason already. And we haven't even had the announcements of where they're going yet. We just know they're leaving. Innova put out a press release letting everybody know that Paul was leaving before Paul announced it himself. Same thing with Ricky. Latitude 64 announced it, and then Ricky did. Paul still hasn't, to my knowledge, put up a post saying, I'm leaving Innova. I think he just left it to them. I could be wrong. Maybe I missed it. I don't know how I would have, but Ricky put up a post today saying, I'm moving on. Thank you to Latitude, etc., etc. So Latitude released it, and Innova did. One interesting footnote of all this is that I think that's the first time that's ever happened, and then it happened 2 times in a row where a manufacturer announced a player was leaving rather than the player announcing that they were leaving or that they were signing with somebody else. So I think that's pretty interesting. So it's a done deal. We talked about it last week, or last episode, that Paul might be moving on, and he's gone. Where he's going is still yet to be completely determined, but it seems very likely that Discraft is the destination for Paul, I guess, the team that he'll end up on. And it also seems to be very, very likely that Ricky Wysocki is headed back to Innova. Now, Rick was on Innova many years ago before Prodigy. Before the big split that happened with Prodigy coming out on the market and taking a bunch of top players to that team, and then also Dynamic Discs becoming a manufacturer and teaming up with Latitude 64 on the west side, and all that stuff happening. Ricky was a Innova player. I believe he threw a lot of rocks and Firebirds, big bead AVRs, that kind of thing. We'll get back to that a little later. But so he's kind of going back to Innova after a long period away, where he saw a considerable amount of success. Obviously, I think inarguably being the best player, not this past season that just happened by any means, but the 2 before that. I mean, 2016, you pretty much have to say Ricky was the best player as far as I'm concerned. 2017, another world championship, many big wins. And this year, admittedly, had a pretty rough season for his standards. I mean, still won some big events and did well. Overall, I think a lot of players would have been happy with the performances he had. But not for Rick. He definitely could have and probably should have done better than he did last season. So he'll be moving on, with Innova being his likely sponsor going into next season. So it's going to be pretty interesting. One of the aspects of this that I've been thinking about is what it must be like to have to move on from discs that you've been really successful with. I guess one of the things to this is that high-level pros that are playing a ton aren't really keeping the same discs in their bag for that long. Rick probably has a few that he's had in there for a few years, or maybe he's got a couple that he's had the entire time he's been on Latitude. But I think for the most part, he's switching out discs in and out. But as far as the molds, he's been pretty consistent with several of those, and he's had a ton of success and won world championships with it. And same with Paul. I mean, Paul's been throwing rocks and Novas, T-Bird 3s, Destroyers, AVRs for so long now. It must be interesting to feel like you have to move on from those discs. I think about it just for myself, like how attached I am to some of the molds that I throw. And I've never been very successful with any of them in terms of my playing ability. They're just discs that I like and that work well for my game and I have good experience with. So to be in a position where you must move on from all of those discs and basically start over must be an interesting position. Now, I think it's funny. On a few times on the chat boards of Smashbox, I said that I think it's possible we'll see James Conrad move to Dynamic Discs. Nobody really agrees with me on this, but I still think it could happen. And people, but he's so good with the JK AVR. He's so good with those AVRs and T-Birds. It's like, James Conrad is one of the best disc golfers on earth. And if you don't think he could throw another putter really, really well, I mean, there's nothing magical about a JK AVR. It's just a disc that he happens to like and he's comfortable with. If you don't think he could throw a Judge still better than 99% of the rest of the earth, you're wrong. He can. These guys can throw whatever they want. Ricky's going to be just fine throwing whatever he ends up throwing. And I'm sure the same for Paul and anybody else that switches. We've seen that. We've seen Rick go from Innova to Prodigy, still be very successful, almost win a couple of world championships there, missing out by very slim margins, and then move on to Latitude 64 and win 2 world championships with that plastic. So that whole thing is kind of silly. These guys are amazing players. It's not going to hinder them to throw one type of plastic or the other. If anything, I've learned testing literally a couple hundred different golf discs over my playing career is that there's a bunch of great discs out there. There's a ton of great molds, and all these guys are more than talented enough to make the adjustment, find the stuff that works for them, and make it work. With Rick going back to Innova, I'm sure he probably still has a few Innova discs that he used to throw that he might put back in his bag, similar to what we saw with Big Germ. He actually went back to throwing some stuff that he had for a really long time, because he went from Discraft to Prodigy, then back to Innova, and he's throwing a rock that he's had since before he was sponsored at all right now. So that's cool. So it's possible Rick's got a couple old Big Beat AVRs or something he's ready to go straight back to. I have no idea. We'll see. We'll figure it out. Do I think he's going back to Innova? Pretty much. I don't know where else he would go. People think, oh, maybe he's going to DD. I don't think so. I really don't see... Same with like Paul to Discmania. I couldn't see that. That doesn't make sense to me. Why wouldn't you just stay with Latitude 64? You're going to be throwing all the same plastic. It's basically a ceremonial difference at that point to the rest of the world, other than your actual contract. You're throwing the same stuff. You're just wearing a slightly different. You're wearing a different logo of essentially the same manufacturer. Now I know that the 3 different brands from the trilogy don't like to be associated as one entity, but it's all being made by Latitude 64. Let's be honest. It's the same plastic. It's all being made by Latitude. Discmania is not any different than Innova. It's the same plastic being made by Innova. That's it. It's the same stuff. So I don't see that being a thing. I would think that they have some kind of friendly relationship in that manner, where it's like, yeah, no, you're not going to sign Eagle to Innova, or Rick to DD. I don't think that would be how it worked. That doesn't make sense to me. I could be wrong. And if anything, this short a couple weeks of this offseason have already told us is that we're playing by slightly different rules here. I never would have thought Paul would have moved on. I never would have thought Ricky was going to go away from Latitude, at least not right now. Paul is the more surprising leave, honestly, just because he's been there forever. He's obviously making great money on all the signature discs and stuff. So you must have got a tremendous offer, or another company is willing to do something for him that Innova was unable to or unwilling to do. We'll get back to that in a second. So it's funny because obviously I'm a pretty well-known Rick fan. So when this news dropped, I got contacted by a number of people. Andy, of course. Anthony hit me up. My friend Chris Caulfield hit me up. And a few viewers and subscribers that I am in contact with through Facebook and stuff reached out to me like, whoa, what are your thoughts? That's part of why I'm doing this episode, I guess, to let you guys know what I think of it. My thoughts. I'm not super stoked about it, to be honest. I liked Rick where he was, and I liked throwing my compasses and knowing that he was throwing the compass and that it's his disc, and I'm a big fan, and yeah, I dig it. I was enjoying being throwing a lot of the same plastic that he was, or at least the same companies that he was throwing. I didn't really overlap many molds. Like I never did the Harp or the Dagger. I never got into the Explorer even though that was his signature disc. But I throw Gobies and Caltrops, and the compass has been my number one. I actually ordered 2 more compasses tonight to try to round out my collection, because it's very possible the compass will either... I would imagine they'll keep making it. It just won't be the Ricky signature disc anymore, because I think they're popular. They're great flyers. They're fantastic mid-range discs. I love them, and I've been throwing them since they came out. I have a ton of them. and I collect them as well. So I think the only one I'm really missing at this point in terms of stock editions, like I obviously don't have every single type that they ever released or any of the Saki Bomb ones that he did on his website or anything. I have a few specialty ones for sure, but I'm trying to have one of all the different stock runs, and I think I'm basically there. I just need a gold line, a stock gold line that I'll get relatively. I'll get that eventually, but overall, I'm not terribly stoked about it, but it's not that big of a deal. I'm not too worried about it. I'm assuming he's going to go to Innova, and I'm assuming they're going to give him some nice signature discs. I'm sure they're paying him well, and they had to have made it worth his while for him to move on in one way or another. So, more power to him. He's a fantastic player. I'm sure he'll be fine throwing whatever, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. I honestly just can't. I just can't really see him going anywhere else other than Innova. Where else would he go? He's not going to go back to Prodigy. I can't see that happening. I honestly don't think they have the financial stability to bring in a player of his caliber anymore. I don't know. I don't know their numbers, but I'm sure in certain parts of the country they sell really well. Around here, they really kind of don't. So I don't know, but I wouldn't think that Prodigy's really in a position to make offers on that level. They just re-signed Dickerson. I'm hoping they're compensating him very well. He's an amazing player with a ton of skill, ton of talent, incredibly consistent, and inarguably one of the best players in the world right now. So hopefully he's getting compensated, but he does not have the name of Ricky Wysocki or somebody like Paul Mcbeth or that level. There's only a few guys that do. That's why it's Paul and Rick. They're the guys. So yeah, I think he's going there. One of the things I wanted to do in this episode is speculate as to what discs we think Paul and Rick might use at different companies. So let's talk about this. Let's see. That's the other question, I guess, is will I change my bag at all based on this change? Like, am I going to start throwing Innova if Rick goes there and he has signature discs? Who knows? I mean, I guess maybe. I'd probably be more likely to. To be fair, I am a fan, but I don't really want to. I like my bag how it is now, but a disc golf bag and the molds you choose to carry is something that is always going to fluctuate and kind of evolve over the years. So could I end up with some type of new disc that they release for Rick through Innova that I test for review or just to try it out and I end up really liking it? Might it end up in my bag? Sure. Who knows? I mean, I throw a mixed bag already. It's only a couple different companies, but it's still not. It's not like I'm sponsored, so I can throw whatever I want. It's possible. I've never been a big Innova guy. I moved away from Innova plastic several years ago because I just found it to be somewhat inconsistent, and I was a big Discraft guy instead over that time period. And then I eventually started throwing MVP and Axiom, and I really liked that stuff for a while. And then I moved on to Latitude plastic, partly to do with Rick moving to Latitude 64, but I was already starting to throw some of that Swedish plastic before that happened as well. So who knows? It could happen. I don't really know. Let's talk about Rick's bag. So say Innova picks up Ricky Wysocki. It's a done deal. What's Rick going to throw? My guesses, and I have some guesses from some other folks too. I think Andy gave me his list of what he thinks Rick would use. I got Andy's list. I got one from Anthony as well. Just for fun, just to speculate. Okay, so what does Andy think Rick would use? He thinks Firebird, Destroyer, T-Bird variants. I mean, that's pretty much obvious. Almost every Innova player is going to use those. Thunderbird, sure, that makes sense. Andy's saying X-Cal. I could see that. That kind of makes sense. Maybe to kind of replace the stiletto. Rocks, Whale, which I think is an interesting observation. I think kind of his thought process there is that the Whale is similar to the Dagger in depth. It's like a really deep, kind of big, large beaded putter. KC AVRs, which I believe is what he used to use. KC big bead AVRs, a Leopard, and maybe some. He is not really sure about mid ranges. And he thinks, and a Rat, or an AVR X3? That's the tough call for me. Is what is he going to replace the harp with? Is it going to be a Rat? Is it going to be an AVR X3? My money is on DX AVR X3s. I think that's the closest thing to a classic hard harp or a zero hard harp that you're going to find. Or what is it? BT hard. Oh, with the three different names for the same plastic. I'm really over that personally. We've been there before. You guys know that. Oh, the DX AVR X3 I think is the best option to replace the harp. Yeah, that was my toughest calls between that and the Rat, because the Rat is like almost like a broken in harp straight off the shelf, but I think he would prefer to break them in himself rather than start with something that's already flying like that and then have that break in and then become maybe perhaps too flippy. Who knows? Pretty crazy stuff. So what do I think? I think a Firebird's absolutely a done deal. I'd bet the house that Rick's gonna carry Firebirds again. Rocks, sure. I think he'll probably maybe not have any other mid ranges. I think he'll probably just have rock variations. I don't necessarily see him throwing a Mako 3, Shark 3, any of those other mids. I don't see any of that happening. So I would say probably rocks, KC rocks maybe. Maybe rock 3s, maybe some champ rock 3s in there. Ricky, not a big mid-range guy in general. I mean, if you watch his in the bags, he only has a couple of mid-ranges. He got, like, for Latitude, he had a compass and an anchor. I believe that's it. I don't think he had any other mids, really, because outside of driver range, he's so money with the harp that he didn't really need them. So I don't know if he's really going to go bother with anything other than some type of rock. Maybe he'll have some type of an overstable mid-range, like a gator or something like that. I really don't know. Maybe he'll go mortar. I'm not really sure. I think a T-Bird 3 is extremely likely. I think destroyers are an absolute given. I like Andy's thought of the X-Cal for the stiletto. I think that makes sense. That jives for me for sure. And after that, I'm not really sure. I'm sure he would throw something for rollers, maybe a Roadrunner. Roadrunner's a phenomenal roller disc. I think he'll probably keep it pretty simple to go back to it and kind of relearn all this stuff. I would imagine, yeah, T-Bird 3, Destroyer, Rocks, Firebirds, all the classic stuff. I would imagine he's going to go straight back to KC Big Beat AVRs. I don't know if I agree with the whale. I don't see him carrying a whale personally. I don't know. We'll find out, I guess. Let me see. Let me pull up what Anthony said as well. Let's see. Putting putter. So here's my buddy Big Anthony's guesses. Putting putter, KC AVR, maybe a mortar for sidearm. Mids would be Discmania molds, is his guess, which is interesting. Maybe like MD3, MD4 kind of thing. Fairways, Roadrunner, Firebird, or FD3, Destroyer, PD2, and then he said, bet it kills you thinking about Ricky throwing Discmania. He's kind of right. I know Nate and Big Germ throw the mortar, but I don't think it's long enough to replace the harp. Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. I didn't think about Discmania molds in terms of what he might throw. Yeah, maybe he'd throw like a PD2 instead of the Destroyer at sometimes. I have no idea. I kind of don't see that though. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see that. I don't know if he would really do Discmania. It's possible. It's 100% possible, and I think even Paul was still able to throw Discmania. I just think he wasn't. Simon is the only Discmania pro who's not allowed to throw Innova, and as far as I know, there aren't any Innova players that aren't allowed to throw Discmania, unless Paul had something in his contract that just never really came up in any interviews or anything. Towards the end there, I have no idea, but I know he definitely used Discmania at other times in his career, but I don't believe he has for that last season at all that I know of. I could be wrong. Maybe he was using the FD3 at some point, because Paul's always been super weird about the overstable drivers. I don't know what his problem is with that. Just throw the Firebird, man. you know it's fine. It's just very strange. Okay. So, to sum up, Rick, I think he's going to Innova, and there is my official guess slash speculation as to what he may carry if that is in fact the case. Again, I essentially don't see where else he could possibly go. I think that's basically the only way for this to go is for Rick to go back to Innova. But who knows? It's Bizarro world now, where up is down and down is up. Who knows? Okay, did Paul's move away from Innova open the door for Ricky? I definitely think so. Um, I don't know. I don't see Innova trying to bring in Rick when Paul's still there. That would be weird. Um, so I think that's likely. Let's get back to Paul. Paul's definitely leaving. Where is he going? Where is he going to end up? What's he going to throw? A lot of speculation. Some people think perhaps legacy. I don't see that happening. I don't think they have the financial stability, or just flat out can't afford him. Straight up and down. I don't think they can afford him. It would be cool. Like that would be a cool thing if he like became a partner with the Rico brothers and tried to really take that brand to the next level. And it was kind of an agreed upon thing that he would get X amount of the profits to kind of grow the brand and stuff. It's a nice idea. I don't think that's going to happen. Here's what I think is going to happen based on a few different things. Is he going to just be on Team Discraft? I don't know if that's necessarily the case. Terry Miller on Smashbox said that he would actually be willing to wager against that being what happened. And he also mentioned something along the lines of that people should think outside the box with all this. To me, what that says is that kind of aligns with another rumor that's been going around that Paul is in fact starting his own brand and Discraft is going to manufacture that brand. Now that would be something that Discraft might be willing to do that Innova is not willing to do. Kind of getting back to what we talked about earlier. Why would he leave Innova if it was just money and discs? You'd think they would do almost anything to keep him there. Maybe it was that they were unable to produce the discs and do this thing that he wants to do, that they have enough trouble just keeping up with Discmania production. Discmania fans are constantly complaining about not having enough of their discs out there on the market, so they certainly don't have enough production space to start another brand for Paul. So maybe Discraft does. Maybe that's what's going to happen. Maybe Discraft is kind of creating a new brand, kind of in the similar vein to an Innova Discmania, Latitude 64 Dynamic Discs type of relationship. And that's what's going to go on. They're going to release a few molds, and Paul's going to throw some Discraft in the meantime until they fill out the line, and then he may or may not continue to do so moving forward. I think that's an interesting possibility, and it kind of jives with a lot of things. If you think about it, it makes sense that that might be the case. Because again, if it's just we're going to pay you to throw our plastic, we're going to give you signature discs. Can Discraft really outdo Innova in a head-to-head there? I don't know. I really don't know. Discraft, a lot of people don't realize that if you're just a hardcore disc golfer, you know Discraft's not as popular as Innova, but you don't know is that what you may not know is that Discraft has a ton of money coming in due to the amount of Ultimate discs they sell. They make a lot of money on the Ultimate side of things, being the official Ultimate disc for many leagues and all that kind of stuff. So they have that money there, and they're still, I'm sure, doing fine in the disc golf realm as well. I'm sure they're making money. So it's interesting. We will find out. I'd like to see, it would be pretty cool to see Paul go back to dynamic discs. And, I mean, I guess I wouldn't be that blown away if that were to occur, but I don't think that's going to happen. It's another thing kind of similar to the legacy thing where it sounds nice. Like, oh, Paul goes back to dynamic and he's there and he takes them to the next level. They're doing great. Don't get me wrong, but they don't really have that super high level pro as part of their team. They just kind of don't. No offense to any of their players, they just don't have anybody in that real top tier as a member of Team Dynamic Discs. That's partly why I've been thinking that perhaps they're trying to make a move for James Conrad, because Conrad has established himself as undoubtedly top 10, probably top 5 player in the world. across the season. He's incredibly consistent, amazing with a putter off the tee. His putting inside and outside the circle is fantastic. He's got huge power and he's very consistent. And he would absolutely be a top player that could be kind of a figurehead for their team. We'll find out what happens with James. I really don't know. So one of the things that also happened today is this picture showed up on Paul Mcbeth's Instagram story. It is a picture of a stack of discs. It has a little like emoji of a crown on top of them, and it says the whole run exclamation point. And it's a stack of discs. My observations about this stack of discs is that the colors seem to be pretty similar to the colors of a lot of newer Discraft ESP discs that I've seen out there on the market. The whole run, and it's a stack of discs. What does that mean? Paul's clearly trolling everyone and having some fun with this, and who can blame him? I mean, this is the top story out there, is that this is what's going on. And yeah, I don't know. The whole run, what does it mean? Are these old swirly destroyers he's gonna be putting up for sale to make a bunch of money on? I doubt it. They look to be ESP discs from Discraft, but maybe they're a whole test run of these brand new Paul's new company discs being made by Discraft. I really don't know, but I thought that was interesting, and clearly Paul's having some fun, kind of trolling everybody and throwing that up there for everybody to continue to speculate and figure this out. As I talk about all this stuff, guys, I've heard things from various people. I don't read forums. I have no idea what's going on Reddit or any type of DGCR forums or anything like that. I think forums are the most useless communities in the entire internet. I absolutely loathe forums. Every time I've been involved in any type of forum, after a while, it's just very clear that there are terrible people on there. There are absolute idiots on there. All kinds of misinformation, all kinds of just insulting, rude, useless people that I have no interest in interacting with. It's not everybody, but there's enough of it that I have absolutely no interest in forums whatsoever. So anything that's coming from me in terms of speculation is either stuff other people have told me that they have heard, or something I may have picked up just kind of from a couple different places, I guess. Smashbox would be one of them. Dixon Jowers on the Box podcast Facebook group, stuff like that. That's basically the only place I'm getting any of this stuff. So we'll see what happens with all this stuff. I just kind of wanted to touch base and let you guys know what happened, kind of my initial thoughts for all this stuff. If, say, Paul were to go to Discraft, it's not anything more complicated than that. Paul's going to Discraft. What's he going to throw? Let's take a look at this. I have, I believe Andy told me what he thinks Paul would throw, and I'll see if I agree or not. So Andy says Forces, Punishers, Machete for his overstable fairway. Even though those are a little fast, crazy overstable. Machete's a mean disc. Vultures, Undertakers, Heat, Wasps, because they're more of a beaded mid, I guess. Buzzes, Meteor, which I think is interesting. And then he says Zone, and Challenger SS is his official guess for putters. I find all that to be pretty interesting. I think the Challenger SS is actually a pretty good call if Paul were to go if Paul were to throw Discraft, I think the Chally SS would be a pretty good option. Definitely an AVR-ish disc and a phenomenal putter overall. Just laser straight, really nice flyers. Meteor caught me off guard, and he said, yeah, that's the only one he's not positive on. I said, why not the Buzz SS? And he didn't answer me. I don't see Paul throwing a Meteor. That's interesting. I think the Zone is a no-brainer. I don't know why he wouldn't throw a Zone or just have one somewhere in your system. It's such a great utility disc. Why not have one of those? I think the Wasp makes sense, but I don't know. I don't know if I really see that. I think he would go Buzzes. of various types. Maybe just the Buzz trilogy, the OS, SS, and the regular Z Buzz. I really don't know. I guess I could see him throwing a Wasp. It's not a disc I have a lot of experience with. I think it would be likely if Paul does just become a Discraft player and that's it, that they would develop some other type of mid range for Paul, a little bit more specifically for him. I think the Heat is a great call. I agree with that for sure. It's a great direct replacement for like a Roadrunner for super flippy shots or for rollers, most likely. Undertakers, I agree with that as well. And Vultures for sure. I think the Vulture is a fantastic disc. I think Paul would throw a Vulture really well. Kind of Thunderbird replacement. I think the Vulture would be fantastic for that. I think Paul would go old school and go with Predators over the Machete. I'm not really sure. The Machete is just so overstable and it's a little bit faster and definitely just really, really beefy. I just don't necessarily see him throwing anything that overstable. The question for me is whether he throws forces or punishers or both. I don't know. I think he would just end up layering a whole bunch of forces. Straight up ESP forces, I think, are the closest he's going to get to a Star Destroyer, which he's been obviously extremely effective with over the years. So I think that's likely. I think he would just throw a bunch of forces and layer them. Maybe a couple different plastic types. Maybe have a Z in there. But I kind of doubt it. I think he would just throw a bunch of ESP forces and just try to find some real overstable ones and then everything else in between, kind of break a few in. But you never know. Punisher could be a good option. It's kind of supposed to be like a pre-broken in force. I don't see him throwing a nuke. I don't see him throwing a nuke OS or any of that kind of stuff at all. Um, and Discraft does have a pretty extensive lineup, but it's not really that many different options. So yeah, I think you would go Vultures. I think Undertaker makes sense. I think he would definitely go with the Heat. I think it would be foolish for him not to carry his own, just to have it. What's he going to replace like his throwing putter, like a Nova with? Maybe a Challenger SS. I don't know. There's not really anything that similar. Could he throw a Roach? That's the only other putter I really think is likely is a Roach of some kind, maybe Jawbreaker Roaches or Pro D Roaches for putting, and then he could throw like a big Z one for driving, putter driving, and longer putter shots. I really don't know. We'll have to see on that one. That one's interesting. I would love for Paul to decide he likes the Challenger SS and he wants one in Z plastic or big Z plastic or something like that for throwing putters. And I would love to see those come out on the market in general. And if Paul's a catalyst for that, that's great. I would almost certainly throw one of those immediately. I would be very likely to pick one of those up because I really like the way the Challenger SS flies, but I like it fresh off the shelf. So I wouldn't really want to throw them for my throwing putters because as they break in, I think they would just get too flippy too quick. With that, I'll probably let you guys go. Not a whole lot to report on my personal side of things for disc golf. I have another couple reviews in the can, or at least one more I'll probably post next week. I have had a chance to actually get in a round with the Rovic RV1D disc golf cart. And overall, I liked it. It worked out well. I don't know if I would switch to it over my Zuka. I think that's unlikely. I'm pretty settled in with my Zuka. I like the setup overall with the easy cart and the soldier bag and the whole way I have it rigged. I think it's a little bit better option for me personally and the courses I play. But the Rovic is interesting. I'm going to try to get at least one more round in with it. Then I'm going to come back to you guys with kind of an updated video, talk about how I liked it and how it performed for me. And I'm also extremely likely to do a head-to-head kind of comparison, side-by-side, pro and con comparison video featuring that and my Zuka Easy Cart and what the advantages and disadvantages of each different design are. Overall, just as something to kind of compare them to. Overall, I'll probably end up just sticking with my Easy Cart. I really like it. It's solid and it's pretty rugged, and I'm comfortable with the way it works at this point. And yeah, that's pretty much how I'm feeling about it. I do have some other discs still left in the testing queue that I really need to get filmed up and finished up relatively soon. I'm hoping to make that happen as soon as I can, but I am running out of time because We have very little time in the day, daylight hours. I don't know how I'm going to get it done to get these last few reviews done. It's going to take a day off and somebody helping me out on a nice day because the rains are due to come back and stick around anytime now. And by the time I'm getting out of work, there's very little daylight left for filming and that sort of thing. So wish me luck on that. I'll try to make it happen best I can. I basically have the Trilogy Challenge stuff and like a couple of DD molds laying around. And that's it. I might take a little bit of a hiatus from disc golf reviews over this winter. I haven't been throwing much, and it's been really hard for me to get the time together to get everything filmed and tested. So we'll see. I may actually kind of step back a little bit, focus on this podcast and other videos that I can make, and take a little bit of a hiatus from some of the disc reviews. And maybe I'll try to round it out to a full 200 and then kind of hang back for a little bit until maybe even start of next season when some new releases come out and we start seeing where everybody's going to go. Because if there is any truth to this rumor and Paul comes out with some new brand, I'm for sure going to have to test that and let you guys know how I'm feeling about that. If Ricky comes out with any type of new signature disc through Innova, I'm definitely going to test that. And any new stuff that comes out in general, I'm likely to test and review, as always. Especially if it's a new Ricky or Paul signature disc, especially after all of this crazy stuff that's been going on and how much press it's been getting. I'd be foolish not to test all that stuff and see where it goes. But it's been interesting. It's going to keep being interesting. We'll probably do a couple more episodes about these topics. I will for sure report back to you guys once anything is fully announced regarding Ricky or Paul and give you guys my thoughts and kind of talk it out and talk it through and let you know what I'm thinking. And yeah, we'll go from there. So thanks for listening. Much love to everybody out there. Let me know if you have any questions for me. Let me know where you think Paul and Ricky are ending up and if you agree with our assessment in terms of where their bags might be and what they might throw. What do you think they might throw? If you disagree, if you want to give us a rundown of what you think Paul's Discraft bag would be or Ricky's Innova bag would be and how you see all that unfolding. One other thing, I guess, before I let you guys go, is the Destroyer. The Star Destroyer. Now, a lot of people have been speculating about the Destroyer as soon as it was announced that Paul was moving on. Who's going to get the Star Destroyer as a signature disc, if anyone? And up until the announcement that Ricky might be coming there, or just this knowing that Ricky's leaving and the likelihood that he will be ending up on Innova, as far as I was concerned, there's only one person who could even have claim to that, which would be Greg Barsby. I don't think Barry Schultz is really positioning for any kind of new signature discs. I don't think it would be really that fair for him to say, hey, I deserve to have the Star Destroyer as my signature disc. I don't think Kenny was really worried about that either. He's got plenty of signature discs still in the works. And I don't think that's really an issue. People were saying, oh, what if Sexton or Germ or none of those guys have world championships, and I don't see you getting Star Destroyer money for a USDGC win. That doesn't seem to be the case. It's basically kind of an unwritten disc golf rule that you're not getting a full signature disc unless you win a world championship. You can get a tour series, and that's great, doing wonders for our players and bringing in a lot of money that's allowing them to kind of live their lifestyle on the road. But as far as I was concerned, Greg Barsby was the only one in the running. With Ricky coming in, does he have more of a claim to it than Greg? Absolutely. Two's better than one. I'm sorry. And just outside of the World Championship wins, just look at the number of big events Ricky's won compared to Greg Barsby. I mean, no disrespect to Greg. Ricky's won a ton of big events and had amazing seasons where he's just crushed the world. And over the last couple years, and he's still arguably the best player in the world. You could, based on this last season's performances, I don't think that's fair to say, but he has all the skill to be. And him versus Paul versus Eagle versus whoever, all of them playing their absolute A-game best golf, it's really flip a coin. I mean, any one of them could win on any given day. I don't think Greg Barsby is really in that discussion yet. I'd love to see Greg kind of hit his stride and take down another Worlds or have some other big wins coming up this next season. I think he'll have a lot of confidence off of this last season and a lot of his strong performances kind of heading into next year. But as far as I'm concerned, if anybody's getting the Star Destroyer, it's going to be Greg or Rick. And if Rick goes back to Innova, I think he would be foolish to not have that part of the deal. Straight up. I think if you're going to go back to Innova and you're Ricky Wysocki and you know Paul's left, you tell him flat out, I want the Star Destroyer as my signature disc, or else we have nothing to talk about. That's how I would go with it. You can't overestimate how financially beneficial it would be to have that disc. It is by far the most popular driver in the Innova lineup, and Innova is by far the most the highest selling company out there. So yeah, it's interesting to see how that'll unfold. But I think if Ricky ends up on Innova, it would be crazy to have him not get his name on the Destroyer. Would that hurt sales? I don't know. Would it hurt sales? Would it help sales? Are Innova players going to be annoyed that Ricky's coming over? Innova fans, are Latitude fans going to move over and follow him? Are any Innova fans going to move over and follow Paul where he goes? I think yes and no, all of the above. I think we'll see it all. We'll see some players that are just annoyed about all of it. We'll see some players that are happy for everybody and willing to kind of try some new things to support them, and everything in between. I think that's life. I think that's how the world works. I think I'm going to let you guys go. Thanks very much for listening. Thanks for all your continued support. Hit me up if you have any questions or if you want to let me know what you think about all this stuff. Again, leave me some comments down below. Let me know what you think Paul's Discraft bag would be, hypothetically. What do you think Ricky's bag would be on Innova, hypothetically? And we'll check back and see how right we are, if anything is actually announced, and when some in the bag videos start popping up heading into next season. Much love. I'll check you later. Cheers.